Oh, there it turned to live.
Yeah.
We're live.
Hooray! Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Cailen McCormick, and I am one of the candidates for school committee in Dedham, and I'm here with Sarah McDonald today.
Good morning, Cailen.
Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to spend a few minutes talking to you about your campaign and what you've been learning and discussing with constituents as you've been virtually crisscrossing the town.
Yes.
So looking forward to it. I'm going to start with a softball question. And just remind folks, if you have questions, you can type them in the comments and I'll be watching and tee them up for Cailen. Tell us about your decision to become an educator and then your decision to enter this race. What's motivating you?
Sure. So I decided to become an educator in college. Like some people go through elementary school knowing that they want to be a teacher their whole lives, and that wasn't the case for me. I actually spent my first year of college at Drew University, which is right outside of New York City, and I worked with 3 young boys who were triplets, and they also had diagnoses of autism. And I worked with them in their home, and I realized pretty quickly that I knew I wanted to go into education, and more specifically special education. And Drew didn't have a school of ed, so I ended up transferring to Boston College, where I got my undergrad degree in early childhood education, and then I stayed on and got my master's in severe and profound special needs. So I got my first job in the Boston Public Schools as a long-term sub, and I've been there ever since. And it's just such a rewarding, anybody who's in education, or I guess a parent nowadays where we're crisscrossing roles, knows how challenging, but also how rewarding the job is. And I think, what recently made me decide to run for school committee, this has been in the back of my head for a little while, but, I think this is such a pivotal and important time for our community and for, all elementary schools, all towns, all public education. And, that really helped me to decide to throw my name in the hat this year. Awesome.
Well, I certainly am glad you did. We both have 7-year-old boys. And,
yes.
and just starting to get to know the school system as a parent. When you think, 10, 11 years down the road and we're preparing to watch them graduate, what do you want to sort of see as the future of Dedham schools? What do you hope to be able to say about their experience and every child's experience at that point?
I love that. I think one of the most important things it's hard to believe that will be here before we know it when they're graduating. But just really thinking about and hoping that they have sparked joy and found joy in their education, and knowing that, our kids, both very different people, I'm sure, with varying needs and different interests, that they're able to find that joy and that they're able to experience, have their individual experiences, but also come out of high school with this shared, sense of community and shared sense of engagement in our town and in our schools. That they really feel a part of the community, and that they come out of our school system having skill sets that are individualized for them and their interests and their needs, but that prepare them for the rest of their lives, whether that's, college or career or, whatever it is that they want to do. It's hard to think about that at this point, but it will be here before we know it, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So one of the things that I know a little bit about is the planning processes that elected boards go through. And there's an element of serving on committees that allows you to really kind of lay the foundation and through a master plan or through a strategic plan. And the schools are deep into a facilities master plan and looking at what the physical structure of Dedham schools looks like moving forward. What are you, what questions are you going to ask if you have the opportunity to serve around the future of Dedham schools, and what would help you make decisions relative to that master plan?
Sure. So I I've had a little bit of opportunity to look through the very comprehensive reports that have been completed. And I think a couple of things. I think that it's really important that we continue to look at those priorities that were laid out in the reports before, at their onset. So we're thinking about balancing our budgets and the town's priorities, ensuring that we continue to have equity for all students when we're thinking about, these brand new beautiful buildings that are being considered to be, built. And, we have the ECEC and the Avery as examples of that. And thinking about who has access to those brand new buildings and how can we make sure that we're rolling that out equitably, which I know was considered as part of all of those plans. And also thinking about walkability for families and these small school communities. I've worked in an amazing small school in Boston Public Schools for the last 5 years or so, and that small community feel is incredible. But also like thinking about the other points that are laid out in this master plan. And I think we also want to make sure that we're continuing to collaborate with families and really involve and hear family voice. I've had the opportunity to speak with some families from the Riverdale community and understand and value the importance of the Riverdale school. It's in a unique location. It's walkable for so many families who live there, and it's kind of set off to the side if you're looking at a map of Dedham. But really understanding the importance of maintaining that community, and just making sure that we're continuing to collaborate and communicate with families, and as a member of the school community, making sure that the school community is communicating and collaborating with other boards in the town to make sure that we're all really on the same page and leveraging the different strengths of the different committees and boards in town.
Awesome. You referenced budget, and this coming year is certainly going to be a challenge across town, right? I mean, the pandemic has really undermined a lot of the economy that actually shores up town budgets. So what are your budget priorities, and where would you like to see us invest in our education?
Sure. So I've had opportunities to work a little bit on district level budget and also on school-based budgets. So I do have a little bit of experience with this. And I think in terms of Dedham and in terms of student priorities, it's really important that we continue to ensure that budget is dedicated to student needs and that we're really looking at extraneous spending and the impact that it actually has on students, because that really needs to be our focus. And I understand that's kind of a broad way to respond, but there are so many different items in a given budget. And I think we really need to break it down and look at how each of those items are directly impacting students. Personnel positions, for example, like who has investment in student outcomes and in student achievement, and how can we shift budget to make sure that all of our spending has a direct impact on students.
That's a great segue, because this idea of student achievement, I mean, there's a lot of healthy debate, I think, around how we measure student achievement. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at some of the data, like per pupil spending, and you look at scores, test scores, and the like, Dedham has areas to improve. And so, what do you think about as far as setting a goal for student achievement and how we measure how we're serving our students?
Yeah, I think this is like the $1 million question, Sarah. I think that there are a lot of issues with standardized testing and how we're using or not using standardized testing to measure student achievement. I have a lot of issues with the MCAS in the state. And I know that there's a big push right now, especially with COVID and, the gaps in learning that have been happening because of remote and hybrid teaching this year and students' accessibility to learning this year, depending on various student needs. So the fact that we're continuing to push ahead with MCAS testing in May and June is really problematic as an educator and as a parent. But of course we need ways to measure student outcomes, but I just don't think it necessarily needs to be these standardized assessments. And I think we need to think about how we're using assessments and the structure of them and what we're actually measuring.
One of the pillars of your campaign has been communication and transparency. So talk a little bit about what that might look like for me as a parent. What would you like to see improve?
Sure. I think there are kind of two things that I think I would like to touch on in terms of communication and transparency. As a member of the school committee, I think I've been fortunate to be able to be in contact with a number of the members who are currently on the school committee. And I've been really impressed by their accessibility, by their willingness to speak. And I think that extends beyond just the campaign season. I think that folks are very easy to get in touch with and, appreciative and accepting of community feedback and community communication. So I think that that's one way to continue to maintain and improve transparency and communication, utilizing platforms such as this, Facebook to share information, websites, communicating with people via email, via phone, etc. So I think that's one piece of it. I think the second piece, in speaking with other folks in town, with parents in town, and just from my own experiences, the communication from schools to families, I think, is kind of inconsistent. I've had experiences where we've had great communication from our kids' teachers and from our kids' schools, but other instances where it's really challenging to engage in effective communication. And I think from a school committee perspective, where we're talking about policies and goals, I think that there are policies that can be put in place to help streamline and formalize communication processes and procedures for students and families.
I'm chuckling because we have a joke here that we get a ton of communication from the schools. It's just not always all that effective.
Absolutely.
or complete. I can get 6 emails in a day, but none of them will tell me the thing that I need to know. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Sarah. And I think it's, your son is at a different school than my children are at, right? So I think it's it's just inconsistent between the buildings and the school administrators. So for sure.
Yeah. We have a question from a viewer. Do we have a way of assessing what's been lost over the past year academically because of the pandemic? And how do we know if students have fallen behind?
That's a great question, David. Thanks so much for asking. I think I can answer this as an educator from my experiences. And so what we've been doing is assessing using the grade level standards and our interim assessments and our district assessments. So, and the students are being assessed based on their grade level, the grade level that they are currently in, which is really challenging because for a lot of students, they've lost time and access to learning. Some students are very available to learn remotely and they do great. I've spoken to parents in Dedham who have told me that their students have done better in remote learning, and I laugh because that is not the case for my own kids. But it is really important that we are assessing what's been lost and maybe even shifting our bars a little bit too, because we're all of our kids are in the same boat where, we've had this, it's been a year now, right? Exactly a year, I think, since we've been out of school. So as educators, we need to constantly be assessing where students are and the gaps that they have, and then reimagining and kind of shifting how we're teaching. So here we go as educators again, right? Reimagining and shifting, which is what we've been doing for the past year. It's nuts.
What have been kind of the top issues or questions on the campaign trail this year? I imagine a lot of kind of back to school questions. What else are you hearing from parents?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about priorities around back to school in the last month or so. That was a big question. What will you do to help prioritize return to school? And that has been solved by Jeff Riley and Governor Baker. So that it's more now we're thinking about how can we make this work at in a school and a district level. A lot of questions. So a lot of my experience has been with students with special needs. So that's come up a lot, and I really appreciate that. I think that we need to make sure that we're keeping our students with special needs at the forefront, especially in the midst of this pandemic, where a lot of our students with special needs could not and cannot access this remote learning. So how are we going to ensure that we're giving students the services that they need, and a lot of times that they missed? So we need to be providing compensatory services and making sure that we really are closing those gaps for our students who have varying abilities. Trying to think what other questions have come up, Sarah. Questions around the traffic study and the master plan, and thinking, which we kicked off with today, and just kind of the general climate in Dedham as well. Like, how do we come together as a community? How do we, embrace everybody's strengths and differences, but also just come out of all of this stronger, especially in relation to our schools?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you for spending some of your morning talking to me and to folks out there. And thank you for jumping in the race. It's not easy. We know that. And
I've learned.
Super, super, super important to all of us that we have strong leadership. So thank you for putting yourself out there. Any closing remarks, calls to action for the adoring fans that are viewing?
Just first of all, I want to thank you as well for being here. I really appreciate your time and your expertise and your perspective. And I want to thank folks for watching, for being here, for supporting our campaign. Please check out our Facebook page, which you should be aware of if you're watching this live right now. We also have a website. Check that out and reach out. It should pop up on your screen. That's awesome. Reach out via email, which is also on our website and our Facebook page. Please support to go out and vote April 10th. Tell all your friends. We need all the votes we can get. So thank you all so much.
Awesome. Have a great day. Get out and enjoy the sun.
Thank you so much, Sarah. You as well.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.